Greetings, fellow barbarians. It is I, Alan Odinson, and you are listening to the Barbarian Lounge podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining me today for part 2 of our breakdown of the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. The book on strategy for life, strategy for combatives, strategy for just about anything you could do in life worth doing. Let's get a few things out of the way before we get started. First off, check us out at thebarbarianlounge.com. That is our website there. You can go there, keep track of the show. We're going to post articles on there. We also have a Barbarian Lounge store where you can go and get all of our t-shirts that we've offered, as well as we got some EDC bags on there, some everyday carry bags. Also, we have the line of Mora knives on there. We're going to be updating that shop sporadically as it goes along. We've got some medical gear we're going to be offering there, some IFAC kits that everyone should have on them every single day, tourniquets and whatnot, as well as some awesome, amazing Barbarian Brew coffee here from Barbarian Lounge. That is right, our own coffee. I got a cup sitting here right next to my Mitacon, and that's a great segue into our sponsors. Check out Mitacon, the energy within. That is MitoconUSA.com, MITO-CHONUSA.com. It's not an energy drink like a lot of people think. It is actually the energy within. It keeps you focused, keeps you on task, gives you a steady bit of energy throughout your workout and after your workout as well. I always have a cup sitting right here next to me, as I do right now. So please check them out. You can also check out Odinson Archery, your traditional bows made from non-traditional materials. Everything you need archery related is there. There's no need to shop anywhere else. If you're looking for the affordable solution, Odinson Archery is it. Check it out at OdinsonArchery.com. Also, if you have not checked out our Patreon site, please do that as well. You can check us out at Patreon. That's patreon.com/thebarbarianlounge. You can go there, become a patron. You get access to exclusive content that we're going to be uploading weekly there, as well as you get all the podcasts early. And just for $1 an episode, you're charged per episode for as little as $1 an episode. Naturally, a little more helps because every single bit that you donate, that goes towards the show, helps us keep doing what we're doing here. We want to continue to bring you these amazing shows, amazing guests, and amazing topics. And we can only do that through your support. So please go there and become a patron. Get access to exclusive content that is only available on Patreon, as well as exclusive episodes. There are some entire episodes that no one will hear unless they are a patron. So let's get started. We've got all that house cleaning out of the way. Let's get started right into it with part 2 of the Book of Five Rings. So the next scroll is the Scroll of Fire, where he talks about, this is basically, it says, I write about battle and combat in this Scroll of Fire, for it is through the image of fire that I think of battle and the strategy of the School of Two Swords. So the first part he talks about here is regarding the place of combat. And Musashi was very clever about deciding where he wanted to fight. He would not just fight wherever they wanted him to. Even if he had to show up to a certain place, he would actually decide his positioning, maybe positioning of the sun, maybe positioning in the sand, maybe positioning near the water. And so a lot of these things Musashi would plan ahead and use this strategy, use the environment to his advantage. And this is very important, using your environment. Again, here we go, right back to the fight again. One of the things that I discovered, and I did a few videos, you'll see it on the Barbarian Lounge's Facebook page, but I did a couple videos talking about the use of the wall in the fight. The first time I was exposed to using the wall as a weapon, like really exposed to it, was through Libre knife fighting. Eventually I'm wanting to get some of those guys on here. So Mr. Ed Calderon, if you are listening, brother, I want to get you on this show. But a lot of people would, when I saw them using the wall, I understand it, but I don't really know if I'm ever going to see a position where I'm going to use that. Well, I found myself in the fight many times using the wall as a a partner in the fight, basically. The wall was holding them in position. It kept them wedged between me and the wall. They were wedged in between. It would hamper their ability to get their weapon into play and allow me that moment in time to get mine into play. So deciding where you're going to fight. Musashi says here, regarding the evaluation of the place, the first teaching is to situate yourself with your back to the sun. Assume a guard position with the sun behind your back. And this could be anything behind your back, whether it be sitting with your back to the wall, facing the door. That's something I have always done. A lot of guys do that. You can't always do that. In certain situations where you can't do that, but I would always advise that if you can't sit with your back against the wall facing the door, have a brother opposite of you that you trust with the ability to do that as well. He also says the same goes for light when you're fighting in a house. Place yourself with the light behind you, and if not, on your right. It is preferable to place yourself without having your back right up against the wall, leaving some space to the left side and not leaving any space on the right side. So obviously you don't want to sit your back all the way against the wall, because as I said, it doesn't take much to get you pinned there. So he says at night, if your opponents are visible, you should also situate yourself with your back to the light. You get that night vision. At night, this is one of the other reasons a few people employed this during the fight. People used flashlights, high lumen flashlights. That could be your source of light. You position yourself behind the light. You can blind your opponent momentarily to get your weapon into play. And I saw several guys use this very effectively. I will say this, another thing people observe, which is not something I really thought of. A lot of people use extremely high lumen lights. This is just a little pro tip for you here. If you're in your house at night and you're using your light, a really high lumen light, think about your walls in your home. A lot of people's walls in their home are white. So as soon as that light hits the wall, you're going to get a reflection of that high lumen right back in your face, and you're going to get a momentary blindness as well. So think about that before you employ these high. Some people like these, 1,000 lumen and 800 lumen lights and everything, and that's great for like outdoors, but I think it's overkill in the house. Some people disagree, but hey, it is what it is. So understand your environment. This is one of the things I talked about as well with the guys. I said, when you're out in public and wherever you're at, do it right now. If you're listening to this show and you're out in public, do it right now. Stop what you're doing. Look around you. Look around and pick a person and say, right now that person started shooting. Where are the exits? Where are places to cover? Is there anybody that's going to run out in front of me if I have to get my gun into play? I don't have my gun on me, which if you don't have your gun on me, shame on you. Right? If you don't have your gun on you, shame on you. If you, for some reason, don't have a firearm on you, what are the weapons available? What can you do? Can you get to them while they're reloading? What type of gun do they have? All these things you start evaluating in your situation, and you can start to understand how you may be able to use your environment to your advantage. There was one situation that we were in the fight where we were disarmed, and this situation was designed to be a shit sandwich for you because basically you were going to get shot. And the only weapons that were available were the things in the environment. And I had to withhold myself a bit because my natural instinct in this class, I was sitting in a chair, like a folding chair. My natural instinct was to stand up and hurl my chair at the bad guy, but obviously you couldn't do that because you don't want to throw chairs at people in the class. But that was my natural instinct. But guess what? That is actually something now that I have included in my practice. When I'm practicing in my own little private training area, that is something I practice. I sit in a folding chair. I have a bad guy dummy set up, and I stand up and practice throwing the chair at the bad guy to get my weapon into play. So, I think that is very, very, very important to understand your environment, how you can use your environment, and employ that against your attacker. The 3 ways of initiative. So Musashi talks about initiative here. So the first consists of attacking before your opponent. I call this attacking before your opponent. Kinnosen, I guess. So attacking before your opponent. This is something when I talk to people about the science of the sucker punch. This is when you know that shit is about to break down. I know you can tell in a fight, if you've ever been in a fight with a guy and they go through the monkey phase where they're jumping around in front of you and yelling and bowing their chest, you know the fight is getting ready to break loose. I am of the mindset that it is important to hit the preemptive shot because the first shot may be the only shot. So if you have to hit the first shot, or if the first shot is going to be thrown, it is better for you to throw it than for them to throw it because that may be the only shot they need to put you out. And once you go unconscious, you have no idea what is going to happen to you from then on out until you wake back up, if you wake back up. You may wake back up in the afterlife. So, if you know shit is about to break down, be the first to attack. The second consists of taking the initiative when your opponent attacks first. I call it taking the initiative at the time of attack. So, at the time of attack, there are instances where you're going to get punched. I think it's important through people's practice to get sucker punched during the scenario. You should get hit first. If you're training firearms, it's important for you during force on force, sometimes for the person just to walk up and shoot you. One, this develops mindset. Two, this allows you to employ medical. But ideally, it's for you to understand that you need to get into the fight immediately. You can't afford to let the attack keep going without a response, because if you don't, you will have violence done upon you. You are being the receiver and not the feeder, if I'm going to use PSYOP terminology. So during the attack, this may be getting punched, this may be blocking, this may be fading back and landing your punch. This is kind of the counter punch. Your opponent is attacking, and you get them at the moment of attack. Maybe a guy's going for a gun and you're a faster draw. You get it out and you pop him before he has the ability to put you down. The third measure of initiative consists of attacking when the two adversaries are getting ready to attack each other. I call it the initiative of the time of a reciprocal attack. This would be the defense of others. And we talk about this in firearms training also. This is something where you have to be very mindful of if you do decide to employ your firearm or any sort of weapon or any sort of violence to protect another person. You have to be very careful of not white knighting the situation, meaning you want to run in there as the hero and you end up going in half-cocked and you don't understand the situation you're going into. For instance, if you walk around the corner and you see a guy holding a lady on the ground, a guy holding a gun to her, and you pull your gun and you just pop that dude. What was happening there? You say, well, a guy had a gun on a lady. Are you sure? Are you certain that's what was happening? Because what if she pulled a gun on him and he managed to disarm her and he was holding her there till the cops got there? What if she had a gun that you could not see and he managed to get his gun out first? What if she had a knife and he managed to disarm the knife, or he pulled the gun on her and she dropped her knees and said, please, please don't shoot me, don't shoot me. You have to be mindful of these situations before you respond with protecting another individual. That can put you in a lot of issue, can put you in bad emotional distress afterwards. Remember the 3 stages of the gunfight. You've got the actual gunfight itself, the psychological, and the legal. Legal is the most dangerous out of all of those. But you will suffer psychological issues, I assure you, if you end up killing an innocent person when you fucked up. You walked in the situation, you didn't know what was happening, and you got into it. Sometimes the better response is to analyze the situation, call 911, and be a good witness until you know what is going on here. Maybe 2 gangbangers who are having a disagreement, and all you see is a guy on his knees with a gun to his head, and the other guy's standing over him, and you're like, oh shit, I need to save this guy. Well, what if this guy's a gangbanger and they're having an argument over a heroin shipment that didn't come in all the way? So think about this. You need to really think about these things before you employ an attack against a second person, okay? A third party, if you will. Another part he talks about here is holding down the headrest. And he says, what I want to express by holding down the headrest is a way of conducting yourself in combat in which you do not allow your opponent to raise his head. In the combat of strategy, it is harmful to allow yourself to be led by your opponent and to place yourself on the defensive. So I'm not going to read the rest of that because I think that says enough right there. That goes right back into the concept of being the feeder. Do not be the receiver. The receiver is the person who is allowing the action to be pushed upon them. By becoming the feeder, and this is Sayat Kali terminology, by becoming the feeder, you have the ability to actually flip the bill on them. So if a guy comes and puts a gun in your face, and you automatically move that gun to the side, and you get your gun into play, guess who's the feeder now? Before you were the receiver, you flipped the bill, you became the feeder. So it's the ability to push the combat in the direction you want it to go. And obviously for us, that's the win. That's the go home at the end of the day. You can do this by many means, controlling the cadence of the fight, obviously. But ideally, it's the mindset to get into the fight, to actually be willing to push the action. No second thought to it. Just boom, your action right off the go. This next part is getting over a critical passage. Here's what I call getting over a critical passage. I will take the example of navigation at sea. In certain straits, the currents are fast, and the distance of 40 to 50 leagues consists of a critical passage. Also, in transversing life, a person encounters numerous critical passages. It is important during a combat or strategy also to get over critical passages. You get over them by precisely evaluating the strength of your opponent and your own capacity. The principle of this is the same as for a good captain who is navigating a passage at sea. Once the critical passage has been passed, the mind becomes calm. If you get past the critical point, your opponent will come out of it weakened, and you will begin to take the initiative. So, this is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself, understanding the methods that your opponent may use. This is really a lot of doing your homework. It's important to study video of your opponent, whether you are fighting them in a ring or if you're going to be fighting them on the street. We're in the information age right now, people. YouTube is a plethora of knowledge as it relates to violence. You can go in there and see robberies, you can see shootings, you can see stabbings, you can see all of these things. I urge you to study them. Study what these people are doing. Study how they react, how they walk into a situation, how they attack. And you can start to get a baseline understanding of what the opponent's going to bring to you. Also, as you see, Musashi talks about knowing yourself. That is vital. What are you willing to do to live? What are you willing to do to live? If you're trapped in a theater and it's burning down and everybody's stomping over each other trying to get to the door, what are you willing to do to go home to your family? What if your family's with you? What are you willing to do to save your family? Are you willing to pull your blade and start slicing throats and try and put the fire out with the arterial spray? I mean, hey, let's be honest here. What would you do to live? A lot of people have never asked themselves that question. I used to, when I did firearms classes, I would ask people, I'd say, okay, you're in a place somewhere and a lady breaks out and starts shooting people. Are you willing to pull your gun and shoot her? And everyone's like, yeah, sure. I say, okay, same scenario, but it's now a 7-year-old little girl with pigtails. And they would you'd see their brows kind of crunch in and their eyes would kind of look weird. And I'd say, yeah, think about that. Because let's be honest, right now there's numerous videos that you can see of ISIS employing children as a terrorist with bombs strapped. If you've got a kid in a place with a bomb, a 7-year-old kid with a bomb strapped to his chest, and you see him open up his shirt, you see him pull the detonator out, and he says, Allah! By the time he gets there, I would expect most people who have asked themselves the question, before he can get Akbar out of his mouth, I would hope you put a round in his dome. So these are the things you need to think about. I know what I'm going to do. The people I hang around with, I need to know what they're going to do. I need to know their capabilities, what they're willing to do to save their own life, save my life, save their other brother's life. I need to know who I'm going to be putting my life in their hands. And when you're out with your brothers, if you've got true brothers that you trust to watch your back, you need to know this about them. They need to know this about you. Those things need to be hashed out way ahead of time before the fight shows up. I assure you. Realizing the situation. Here's what I call realize the situation. In group strategy, it is necessary to recognize the moments when your opponents are at a high point and when they are at a low point, to know their numbers and their intentions, to make into account the conditions of the place, and to discern their situation clearly. You must be able to deduce from these things a way to direct your forces applying the principles of strategy, which will lead with certainty to victory and to fight knowing how to take the initiative. And this is basically understanding the cadence of the fight. He says here, in individual strategy, you must have knowledge concerning your opponent's school, discern their personality, find his strength and his weakness, use tactics that thwart his intentions, and it is important to seize the initiative of attack by perceiving the rises and falls of your opponent's combativeness, and by knowing well the cadences of his intervals. If the strength of your wisdom is sufficient, you can always perceive what the situation is. If your body moves freely in the realm of strategy, if you accurately probe the mind of your adversary, you will find many ways of winning. You must work this out. And this is, again, knowing yourself, knowing your opponent. You see this is vital already as we start off this Book of Fire. You see that this was vital to Musashi's strategy because this was mindset, this was life. His mindset had to be cultivated. He had to know himself. He had to know his opponent, how they train. You need to keep up to date with the methods of training that are out there so you know what people are doing. You know, a lot of times, if you've been around weapons enough, if you have a guy pick up a weapon, you can look at him and tell immediately what his proficiency is with that weapon. Just by, if he picks it up, holds it for 5 seconds and sets it down, you can get a good read on what he knows. I know that seems weird to a lot of people, but that is something I've picked up throughout the years. You can start to get this understanding of your opponent. Once you understand your opponent, understand yourself, understand the methods they employ, you're close and you're moving forward to the path of victory. Recognizing the instance of collapse. For each thing, there exists an instance in which it collapses. In individual strategy, it may happen that during combat, your opponent begins to collapse as a result of a discordance in cadence. But if you slack off at that moment, you will give him the opportunity to reestablish himself. You will lose the chance to defeat him. In group strategy, once you have grasped the cadence of collapse of your adversaries, it is essential to place them under attack without leaving them a single instance interval. If you let them have a breather when they are about to collapse, you will give them the chance to recoup their forces. And we see this a lot of times with the use of suppressive fire. You'll have, say, like a fire team of 2 people, and one guy needs to move forward, so the guy who is staying behind at cover will open fire and suppress that target so they cannot fire back, allowing the person to move to a forward position where they achieve cover, and they do the same as the other person moves forward, and they basically, just vault back and forth till they get close to the target to be able to take them out. And this is just putting the pressure on them, and not letting up. This is one of the reasons why in combatives I tell guys, you want a good, I would say 20 to 30 seconds of violence on your opponent. A lot of times it doesn't last that long. If you know what you're doing and you do it correctly. A lot of times the violence doesn't last that long. But the idea of overwhelming them with extreme violence, they're not expecting that. That is disrupting the cadence. The cadence of a robbery is a guy walks up to you, puts a gun in your face, or he pulls a knife or whatever, and he says, "Give me your shit, motherfucker, right now, don't you fucking move." That's the idea. You're supposed to go, "Oh my God, okay, here you go. That's what you're supposed to do. They're not expecting you to grab that gun with 2 hands, move it to the side, and pull out your blade and start putting holes in them. That's not what they're expecting. They're not expecting that level of violence because that's not supposed to happen. That is not the cadence of the fight. So you have this ability, once you put it on them, you need to hold them to that fire and keep pushing them backwards. You see it in fighting all the time. When you got a guy hurt, A good fighter knows when he's got a guy hurt. He can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their body language. You can see it. Once you see it, you need to pour it on until the fight is over with. And you need to also be able to recognize in your opponent when that moment has passed you. When that moment has passed you, it's gone. Do not push it any further or you are wasting energy. So understanding when your opponent is ready to break is vital. It's very, very important in the fight. Becoming your opponent. Here's what I call becoming your opponent. This is the thinking. This is the thinking you do when you put yourself in his place. In life, there exists a tendency to overestimate the power of the adversary. Take, for example, a robber who, not having succeeded in fleeing, locks himself up in a house. If you put yourself in his place, surrounded with all society as his enemy, you are desperately upset. Someone who locks himself up this way is a pheasant, and the person coming in to kill him is a falcon. You should think all that over well. That is a powerful, powerful statement. I don't even recall reading that thing of the person who locks himself up this way is a pheasant and the person coming in to kill him is a falcon. That's golden right there. Props off to you, Musashi. But, that says a lot. Becoming the opponent, and this is just what I was talking about earlier, understanding the mindset behind your opponent. A terrorist who's coming into a place to kill a bunch of people. What is his mindset? What is the goal of this guy? What do they want to do in this fight? When they've shown up and they've struck the bot, where's their mindset? They're there to die. They're there to die, and they're there to take a bunch of people with them. That is the goal for them. They're there to die and take a bunch of people with them. Your goal should be as the falcon, because let's be honest, those people, I think the pheasant really describes these people well, because they've kind of scuttled into the position, and they've already given up. I know you're going to religions and all this stuff like that, but even if you're talking an active shooter, those people have already given up. Their goal has already been decided. They've decided what they're going to do. So they've rolled in. Their goal is they've given up on life. They don't want to live anymore. They're going to blow themselves up. They're going to shoot a bunch of people. Whatever it is, that's their goal. And they plan on going wherever it is they plan on going. They've given up. They have shown their hand. So they have become the pheasant. Your mentality should be that of the falcon. You should be ready to roll in as a predator, do work, and take that person out. Give them their wish. They're going to get everything they want except taking other life with them. Or even if they have taken some life, say an active shooter, God damn it, they're not taking any more. I had this discussion with one of my good buddies a while back. We talked about the idea of active shooters and whether it be wise to flee, or if you can escape, should you escape or should you fight? I'm of the opinion that if you carry a gun on you, you have made a decision to fight. And I'm telling you, we could do a whole episode on this scenario alone. But I'm of the opinion that if you have the training, if you have the mindset, if you have the willingness to fight, you should fight. Because that's what men do. Not a lot of people would agree with me. They would say, I don't owe them people shit. Well, that's you. That's on you. Maybe I have a bit of a hero complex, but I would rather be a dead hero than a coward. And I believe that if you flee in a situation like that, when you have the chance to stop loss of life, you are a coward. And you will have to live the rest of your life knowing that you are a coward, that you didn't do anything when you had the chance to do it. Do you really want to live with that? Do you really want to live with that idea that you were a coward on that day? On what could have been your finest hour, you lived as a coward. Undoing four hands. Here's what I call undoing four hands. If you and your opponent are both doing the same thing, pushing one another back, the combat will not unfold to your advantage. As soon as you feel that you are being drawn into restraining your opponent by making an effort similar to his, drop what you are doing and seek to win by other means. This is right back to being the feeder. Don't be the receiver. Don't let him push the action on how you should respond. You see guys who, you see this in the fight game, you see guys who, they're intent to go out there, and they're intent to throw hands and swing for the fences until somebody drops. And you see their opponent, a lot of times, who isn't known for that, will feed into, will allow themselves to receive this information. And all of a sudden, before you know it, they're in a slugfest, and they're in the fight that the opponent wanted all along. So stick with what you do. Know what you do and do it well. Moving your shadow. This is to be applied when you're unable to discern what is in the mind of your opponent. An individual strategy, when your opponent takes up a guard position with his sword held back at one side, feign an attack, and his mind will then be reflected in the movement of his sword. Having unveiled his state of mind, you will employ effective means against him. In group strategy, when the state of your adversaries is unfathomable, pretend to attack forcefully and then discover their tactic. So basically this is using a feint to understand what your opponent wants to do. And a lot of times this can be done, especially if we're talking reality-based sort of combatives. I tell guys, whenever you have a bad guy or a perceived threat coming towards you, and you put your hands out and you're like, oh man, just kind of, what's going on, buddy? And he keeps coming forward and you say, hey, you're making me uncomfortable, just stay back there, talk to me from right there. And they keep coming. That's a verbal feint. You're giving them the feint of, look, I don't want any trouble, even though we all know, if you're listening to this, fellow barbarians, you're ready for trouble. If you're ready for trouble, right where you're at, give me a huh. So you're giving them this idea of you don't want trouble, even though you're prepared for trouble, should trouble arise. And they keep coming forward. If a bad guy stops, if he's not a bad guy and he truly wants to ask you a question about where such and such is down the road, if he truly does that, he will understand your concern about him getting closer. So if he truly has this mentality, he will stop where he's at. If he wants to do you harm, he will keep coming. He will keep coming in because he wants to get closer. So using this verbal feint, you can start to understand exactly the intention of your opponent. If I say, hey, stop, man, just talk to me right there where you're at, and they keep coming forward, then there's a problem. That tells me that they're trying to use dialogue to get closer to me, and I am not comfortable with that at all. So you can use these feints physically, you can use them verbally, you can use them with your eyes, with your body language. Your body language will tell the person a lot about you, even when they're coming in. Another one here is constricting the shadow. He says this is when seeing that your adversary intends to attack. In individual strategy, at the moment your opponent is about to attack, you with a strong will, you get him to give up his action by using an effective cadence. During the cadence of his retreat, you find an effective means to defeat him. You will take the initiative of attacking. You must work this out well. This is basically, again, understanding the cadence of the fight, understanding exactly how to control your opponent once they have realized that you understand their means of using shadow to conceal their intentions. So moving on to a few other things here in this Book of Fire. There's a few things that can be skipped, different types of cries and, stuff like that, hitting the corner, and some of those are mainly in the realm of sword fighting. But one of the things I like here was the idea of smashing. He says, it is important to have the mind to smash the adversary, considering him to be weak while viewing yourself as strong. In group strategy, if the adversaries are few in number, or even if they are many, they are in a state of weakness when they are moving about indecisively in a disoriented condition. Smash them, starting with the head, adding to this an oppressive burst of energy that has a sensation of pushing them and smashing them. If you do not smash them enough, it is possible they may regain their strength. In individual strategy, when you're fighting against an inferior opponent, or when your opponent backs away as a result of discord in his cadence, it is important not to give him a moment to breathe, and without meeting his glance, to continue straight on and smash him completely. It is of vital importance not to give him least opportunity to recover. So, Musashi talks about here is viewing your opponent as weak, or considering him to be weak and viewing yourself as strong. This again is mindset. This is a level of self-confidence. This is something you get from training. A lot of people will want to kind of shit on training, and they're like, oh, I don't need training, and you know, all stuff like that. I could tell you right now that is not true in the least bit. It's the same manner as you have those guys that I talk about firearms in the same way I talk about any sort of personal protection or fighting. You'll have those guys that are like, you know, I don't need to learn to fight. I've been in fights before and I can knock somebody out. And I'm like, have you ever been in there with someone who's actually trained? Because let me tell you, that's a different world. And then there's different levels of someone who's been trained. If you, I remember when I was back in my competition days, I was fighting and I was doing all this stuff. I was just starting out. I was a young kid at the time, grappling, and I was a stud, man. I ain't gonna lie, I was a stud. I was, you know, handling everybody I was going up against. Then I went to a seminar with UFC fighter Frank Trigg. And I got the chance at the end of class to roll with Frank Trigg. He was a very accommodating individual, very nice. And Frank Trigg wiped the mat with me. I mean, it was like I'd never had a lesson before in my life. And that was just the varying levels of training. And it just let me know that, wow, there's a different level than where I'm at. Because I was bigger than him, stronger than him, but it didn't matter. He completely destroyed me. He threw me, submitted me, and all these things. So, you know, but it is vital to understand and have that mindset that I've always been of the thought pattern that you need to have the mindset going into the fight that you're the baddest motherfucker in the room. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a gunfight, whether it's a blade fight, fist fight, group fight, whatever it may be. You are the baddest motherfucker to walk into that room on that day. If it's in an alleyway, you're the baddest motherfucker in that alleyway. Whatever it is, you need to have this mentality. This will drive you through the contest, whether you win or if you survive the contest. Because if you're the baddest motherfucker in the contest, your idea is that you're not dying today. So you may have 6, 7 bullet wounds to you, and yes, people do survive those. You may have 6 or 7 bullet wounds to you, but you know what you're doing? Your mindset is that you're going to live, because bad motherfuckers don't die. Bad motherfuckers don't die. So you are, or at least that's the mentality you want to have. So you're applying medical to yourself, and you're handling the situation, and you're going to live. You're going to live through it. So that's important to understand as well, to really have this idea of smashing your opponent. That you're going in there, you're going to smash them, you're going to put them down. Why? Because you're the baddest motherfucker to walk that plane of existence at that time, at that moment. That moment in time, you are it. Lastly, in the book of Fire, Musashi says, talks about the body of a rock. He says, he who has mastered the way of strategy can immediately become like a rock. At that point, he will never receive a sword blow, and nothing will be able to move him. This, again, as you can see, this entire book so far has mostly been about mindset. It's about mindset. It's having this idea of, you know, I'm not dying today. Or he talks about never receive a sword blow, never be able to move. This is in the brain. This is things that he's worked out in his mind. He has put it in his head that, you know what? I'm not getting cut. Even if I do get cut, I'm not stopping. I'm continuing to fight until I have won. It's either victory or Valhalla. All right. If I use a Norse term, victory or Valhalla, and that's a big thing for a lot of people to try and really grasp their mind around. A lot of people have trouble with that. Just really, because a lot of people have never been put in the position where you're going to die today. The only situation you have here is to die on your feet or die on your belly. That's weird for a lot of people to really think about, because a lot of people just really, they think of that as like kind of a defeatist mentality, but I don't see it that way. I don't see that in any way, shape, or form as a defeatist mentality. If anything, that's a victory. That's a massive victory on my part, because I've made peace with what I'm going to do. And, a lot of times you can say, well, like the conversation I had with a friend of mine where we were talking about different aspects of active shooter. He said, well, if you do this and you get killed, what about your family? What about your family needs to be taken care of and everything? And I completely understand that situation, 100%. But again, my family knows me. My wife knows me. Kids know me. All of them know my mentality. And they know that I'm going to fight. They know that my mindset is that of Victor Valhalla. And I know my wife, as much as she would miss me, and as much as she would be broken without me there, she would completely understand my path that I chose there. She would look down at me. We've talked about this. This isn't something I'm, thinking about here. We've talked about this. She would look down on me if I chose to run away when I could have saved lives. She would look down on me. I would look down on me. She would view me as a coward. One of the reasons maybe that is because my wife has the ability to take care of herself. She does. She has the ability to sustain herself. So she's not necessarily dependent on me. Sure, there are things that we provide each other. But for her, she knows my mindset. It's the same reason if she had the chance to take lives if she had the chance to save lives and take the life of a bad guy in the process or escape, selfishly I would want her to escape, but I would also think a little bit less of her if she did not save a life. She knows. She's told me this about herself. I've told her this about myself. We both know this about each other. We both understand our mindsets behind these things. And I think that's an important conversation for people to have with their spouse, with their significant other, whomever it may be. It's an important conversation to have with your brothers. And I think it's vital because these are things that you don't have to think about once the violence comes. Once the violence comes, you need to be focused on the fight at hand. You don't need to be focused on, what about this? What about that? You don't need to be thinking about that. The fight is there. You have to focus on the fight. And any sort of aspects you start thinking about outside of that is putting a hindrance on you. So now we're at the Scroll of Wind. And this is where, in this chapter of the book, Musashi talks a lot about other schools and other methods of training. And I'm going to kind of skim over these a little bit. But first one he talks about is knowing the way of strategy in other schools. And, that's vital important, especially when you're talking about martial arts. That was one of the advantages we used to have when we would go to grappling tournaments, is our base was that of catch wrestling or shoot wrestling. So there wasn't a lot of places that taught that. So some of the holds, some of the methods, some of the things we employed were very different than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So we would go to grappling tournaments and go against Jiu-Jitsu guys. We'd be using head scissors and half Boston crabs. And these guys would be like, what the hell? Nobody does this in our school. So it wasn't that the moves themselves were difficult to counter, but they never practiced them. It's the same as when you see guys who get caught in the Keisagatami, or the headlock position, the head and arm position on the ground. A lot of schools just don't really teach that as much anymore because it was deemed as such a easy position to get out of. People stopped teaching it because they weren't using it in competition. Well, then you start having guys rolling in using this position, and guess what? People were getting stuck. They were getting ridden to the point of exhaustion. So it's very important to understand the methods used by other schools. It's also important to understand the methods used by criminals, because this will help you survive in the long run. Take a sip of my Mitacon here. Oh, man. MitoconUSA.com. So he talks about here, Musashi is talking about people using the long sword, the really long, large sword, trying to make up for their lack of skill with length. I mean, That's what she said. Yoink. But, you know, this can really be looked at in the firearms world as well. You get that with the guys who want to carry. They're like, oh, I'm going to carry this big heaping hog leg and high pressure gun that's going to do this and do that because the bullet's bigger and it's got more knockdown power. Absolute bullshit. No such thing as knockdown power. You know what knockdown power is? It's the ability to shut down the central nervous system or make something bleed out. Typically the central nervous system. That's what knockdown power is. And that can be accomplished in many different ways. You can do it with your fist. You can shut down the central nervous system momentarily. That's what a knockout is. If you want to shut it down permanently, you put a round into the brain. So a lot of guys will try and get a big, giant, powerful handgun that they can barely handle the recoil on, and they spray rounds all over the target. But I'm just carrying this because it's a big gun. Don't get a gigantic, ridiculous gun that you cannot handle effectively, and that means being able to make reliable headshots 25 yards and beyond if need be. Don't do that just because you want to use it as an extension of your masculinity. Schools that use a sword with brute force, this is, people that try and compensate for their lack of skill with just ridiculous violence. And don't get me wrong, ridiculous violence has its place and it can be used. Even when I do the berserker training, I have people just go apeshit berserker violence on the target. However, I have them do it again at the end of class after we've given them the necessary skills to be able to put forth effective combos that allows the same level of violence, just controlled to a level of where we're skillfully applying that violence. So, don't just go out there swinging fists and think that's okay. No, you want to be aiming for targets, I'm not punching the head, I'm punching the jaw. I'm punching the nose. I'm punching the temple. I'm hitting behind the ear. I'm aiming for a brachial stun to the neck. Different things like that. So a lot of guys just get so caught up in this aspect of just brute force and, oh, look at me, I'm strong. I have strength and I can flip over a school bus and all this shit like that. And in reality, I can tell you right now, in the realm of modern day violence, that's fantastic against one person. 2 people, maybe. 3 people, probably not. One guy with a weapon, no. So don't get me wrong, being strong is better than being weak, but there is a point of diminishing returns. Do not let your brute force strength become your sole method of strategy. Schools that use the short sword. So he talks about schools that just want to use a short weapon, a short sword. And to me, this goes for pocket pistols. There is a place for pocket pistols. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely a place for pocket pistols. However, a pocket pistol should never be your primary weapon. Why? The same way that a short sword lacks the length to be able to fight against a longer sword or whatever, your pocket pistol lacks the necessary ammunition for an extended fight. Maybe you get lucky and you get that first round ends the fight. Who knows? Maybe 2, 3 rounds in the fight. However, do you want to stake your life on a maybe? On a hope? Hope's a pretty pitiful plan, guys. So do not mistake this idea that you just carry a pocket pistol, this little small pocket pistol, because it's comfortable to carry and you can just slip it in your pocket. No. I say if you're going to carry a pocket pistol, it needs to be, a 410 Derringer, because you've got limited amount of ammunition and you're going to be shooting very close with this pocket pistol. Obviously, have you ever tried to make a 25-yard shot with a Smith & Wesson Bodyguard? Have you ever tried that? I mean, a Bodyguard 380, you ever tried that? So, think about these things when you talk about carrying your primary weapon. It needs to be something that you can use. As a secondary weapon, yeah, that's great. Like a short sword. Short sword's great as a secondary weapon. Primary? No, not a good idea. It's the same with blade work. I talked about karambits earlier. It's a specialty weapon. It has limited length. You need to carry something that has a length that you can fight with. Next part is schools that have a large number of techniques. Schools that have a large number of techniques. Musashi was very much about streamlining his training. And you see a lot of schools now that have all of these intricate patterns, intricate ways of doing this and doing that. You see it in firearms training too. Oh, they have all this just tactical, flipping the mag out, all this ridiculous, cliche bullshit that they do. And I can tell you, under stress, I do not believe that you can do that. And in a dojo, in a place you know, even a place you don't know, in a nice sanitary, clean dojo with mats and all this stuff like that, no matter how real your scenario is, it's not going to be real enough. And I say this because in the fight, the scenarios that we were in, the environment was a real environment. It was not a synthetic environment. It was a real environment. And I've done force-on-force training in dojos, and we've practiced being held up and all this stuff like that in dojos and all stuff like that. It is not the same. It is not the same. I don't care what anybody tells you or how they try and create it. It is not the same. From the smells to the feel of the floor, the walls, the lighting, it's just not the same as being in an actual real environment. So you get these schools that have all these techniques that say, oh, you'll be able to apply this, you'll be able to do this, and this, and it's not going to happen. It is just not going to happen. You need to streamline your training to simple, effective moves. Simple, effective moves that you can employ under stress. Think of a caveman skills. Simple moves that you can apply under stress. And a lot of people will use the idea of the fighter pilot. They'll say, well, a fighter pilot has the ability to, I've heard this from a lot of different people, at high speeds he can make split-second decisions and this and that, and he's operating this control and that. Yes, but the fighter pilot is in an environment that he is comfortable in. Why? Because he's a fighter pilot. If you take that fighter pilot out of the plane and throw him into a fire engine and have him run to a fire, and tell him, okay, grab the hose, we got to run in there, we're going to knock this fire down, you think he's going to be making complex decisions during that situation? No, he's not, because that's not the environment he is comfortable in. Same thing with a firefighter. Firefighter can go in there and he can handle a fire like a boss. He can put that fire down, he can save lives, do 10 different things at one time because he knows that game. You take that firefighter and throw him in a fighter plane and tell him to pilot this thing, he's not going to be able to do it. So you have to understand that this comes with knowing your environment as well. We talked about earlier, but if you take all those techniques, if you take the fighter pilot, pull him out the plane, throw him on a hose, tell him we're going in to knock this fire down, then you take that fighter pilot and you say, okay, let me show you 5 simple things that will help you get through this. I don't want you to do anything else but these 5 simple things. That fighter pilot's going to do pretty well. If you take the same aspect of many different things, we see this in combatives a lot. We see this in combatives where guys want to teach all these intricate techniques, but in reality, you don't need all that shit. If you have a toolbox that has too many tools in it, it makes it difficult to find the correct tool for the correct job. So streamline your training. Don't be one of these places that have all these complex methods of doing this and doing that. It's not going to work. It's just not. Schools that insist on the importance of the guard position in the art of the sword. So he's just talking about places that talk about all these different guards and ways of blocking and deflecting and all this. And we see this in combatives as well. Look, streamline your things. Forget all this hokey shit that's out there. Streamline it to things that work, things that you can employ under stress, things you can teach people in a day. If you can teach somebody something in a day, ways to defend themselves in a day, you're doing a good job of streamlining. Schools that teach a particular way of gazing, this is places that tell you stare at their eyes and all this stuff like that, and stare at their hands and everything. Now, that's one of the things I've always had with knife tapping. And let me tell you, before I get started here, people heard me say knife tapping. They're like, oh, he's going to talk bad about knife tapping. No, I'm not. I actually use some of the deflections and tapping and stuff in the fight. I use those in some of the scenarios, and they worked very well for me. However, there was no level of complex tapping. It was pretty much basically like a corkscrew tap, control the limb, and go from there. There wasn't anything. There wasn't anything as far as like tap, 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 check, check. Wasn't any of that shit. But one of the problems that I do have with tapping is it does tend to instill a bit of focus too much on the hands, and I'm not a huge fan of that. You get your focus on those hands. You're following that knife everywhere. The hands can deceive. The same way the eyes can deceive. You do not want to get deceived by motions of the hands, because while you're watching the hands of this guy that's trying to attack you with a knife, or a lot of times you're not even watching both hands. Sometimes you are. Okay, I'll concede that. But while you're paying attention to the hands here, you pay attention to his feet. Paying attention to his head. Maybe when you tap this blade across the body, he just leans forward and headbutts you in the face and stabs you in the gut, right? Maybe you tap it this way and you're trying to check here, and the guy kicks you in the balls or knees you in the balls, and he stabs you in the face. So I'm not a fan of tracking the hands too much. I do believe there's a problem where you get way too much target focus, and it does have diminishing returns. Do you need to keep track of the hands to an extent? Yeah, of course you do, because that's where the danger is usually coming from. But you have to be mindful of this focus. You get this target focus. You see it in gunfighting a lot too. Guys get target focused, man. They're focused on this bad guy, but they're not scanning all around 360 degrees for any other threats that may be showing up. Schools that teach various kinds of footwork. So Musashi was big on walking. He was big on natural stances. I'm not a big guy on stance. When it comes to like firearms, Weaver, isosceles, good schools will not even talk about stance. Whatever position you're standing in, that's the position you fight in. It's the same as Musashi talks about walking. Whatever you walk, if you're walking right now, stop, look at your feet. That's your fighting position. So, are there better positions? Yeah, there may be for different situations, but I assure you, whatever position you'll need to be in, that's the position your body will be in. Now, obviously, you want to get away from crossing feet and stuff like that, because, if you cross feet, you start tripping, you start falling. However, I think people spend way too much time focused on stance as opposed to actual methods of fighting. You're not going to be in a fighting stance whenever the shit happens, whether it be combatives or, if you have to use empty hands, a blade, guns, right, whatever it may be. You're not going to be in a ready-made fighting stance. First off, getting into a fighting stance telegraphs your intent to your opponent. You don't want that. You want to be in a strong stance, but if you practice walking, if you practice just stopping and having a good sense of balance in general, you will always be in a stance to defend yourself. Schools that stress speed is another one that he talks about. Schools that stress speed, you have guys that talk about being faster, and the older you get, you're going to start slowing down. Speed is something that will diminish over time. It just will. If your entire basis for your fighting strategy is based off of how fast you are, that's not going to work for you. It's the same as I've always put forth a mentality, and I will say it was fortified at the fight when I was there. A lot of people put a focus on, they will get their shot timers out with their gun, and they'll practice drawing and trying to get like a 1 second draw and shoot. That's great on the range. That's fantastic on the range. And, it looks really cool, and it sells a lot of videos and magazines and stuff like that. In reality, that's not going to happen. One, you're not going to be on a perfect range like that. Two, let's be honest. Most of the motions these guys make to draw their handguns, especially from concealment, is a big move. It's a big move. And if you find yourself needing to get your gun into play, the bad guy's already going to have his gun on you. Gun pointed at you, finger on the trigger, he's ready to fire.